Sports Podcast.
It's pod time.
It doesn't get any better, does it?
Does it get worse? That's what's
Maybe.
important.
Yeah. We'll find out.
Okay. Hi, James. How are you?
Not bad. Thanks for having me back. Last week I was referred to as from Nottingham. Took great offence to that. So I'm happy to put the record straight that I do not live in Nottingham. I am Derbyshire. And any further comments will be taken to heart.
And Joel, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi Matt. Yeah, all good, mate. Thank you. How are you?
I'm not bad. We're gonna chat primarily about football, FA Cup, and just today in the news there was a financial fair play points deduction for Notts Forest. So we're going to touch on that, the impact on the league, but also financial fair play in its entirety. Bit of golf chat with the unofficial fifth major players happening over the weekend, and Scotty Scheffler defending his title. We'll summarise Six Nations rugby from the weekend too. And if we've got time, we might squeeze in a little bit of tennis as well. So we'll kick off with the FA Cup. In the doc, we have said magic of the FA Cup returning.
Back.
Did it ever go away?
Yes.
You get a lot of these Premier League managers moaning about the FA Cup and the replays and stuff, but as a lower league supporter, FA Cup is as big as I think as it's ever been this season. It's been great. I think the quarterfinals this week were some of the results we saw were pretty impressive. You know, seeing Coventry through to the final is. You think of that at the start of the year, being a Coventry fan, you're seeing your team play at Wembley in a semi-final of the FA Cup is a great story.
Okay, so in the FA Cup this weekend then, so Coventry are in League what?
Their Championship playoff final team last year, lost on penalties.
Penalties last year.
Yeah, good manager, Mark Robbins, who's been there for a while. But just the way the game went, they scored first. They were like pretty much in control of the game from what I saw. And then Wolves got back on top, scored 2 goals, and you thought that was the leg before two. I think it was 97th and 90th minute goals for Coventry. 90th. That's a new one.
No, I think, yeah, so it is 100th minute, but it's the 90th plus 10. So I think 90th is fine.
So that is some way to win an FA Cup quarter-final.
Yeah, that's incredible. What an away trip.
Yeah, I actually saw some fans on the way back on Saturday, a big group of them who were just like, that was one of the best games they'd seen while they've been supporting Coventry. So I think every fan of a lower league team who wasn't get a day like that is great.
And they were really good on the day, Coventry. Thought they played really well. Had chances to put the game to bed. And then obviously get pegged back a little bit. Like Wolves still have quality, but they're missing a lot of forward players at the moment. Wolves definitely told towards throughout the game. Really, they've only got one fit forward at the club at the moment, I think. But like you say about the job that Mark Robbins has done, it is amazing. Like they lost big players in the summer, so they had Gyökeres, who went to Sporting, and he's on like 34 goals and 16 assists now.
Yeah, he's one of the most informed strikers in the world.
So to lose a player of his quality, and they started the year in the Championship like not great. I think Mark Robbins was in some trouble around November time, but they've gone on a crazy run. I think they've only lost 4 in 22 or something now. So, yeah, good luck to him in the semi-final. I feel like they got, I'm glad they didn't get City.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a bit of jeopardy in that game. Like they can definitely get at United. They've got good players. One of them, Callum O'Hare, is a really, really decent little footballer. He's come back from injury this season, and he's been in great form. I think actually he might get a decent move in the summer. I think his contract's running out or something like that. So
Yeah, the weird thing, obviously, getting United. Yesterday, you saw United's 3 different versions. They came on, it was super aggressive. Everyone was quite impressed by them. And then they go missing for.
Yeah, there's always a team that comes from
way back every year in the Championship to nick a playoff place. And it just feels like Coventry are going to be that team this year.
Yeah, the amazing stat about them, if they got to the FA Cup final, they'd have to play the Championship playoffs on the Saturday.
Yeah.
The Cup final on the Sunday.
Yeah, they're on the same weekend, aren't they? I mean,
be some rescheduling, I reckon.
Have to do something about that.
Yeah, definitely. I know. Yeah, we'll talk about the United Liverpool game next. But just while we talk about scheduling and games on the same weekend, we spoke about how intense the basketball schedule was.
Mm-hmm.
So Celtics were due to play against the Washington Wizards last night, but then I saw Washington Wizards had played earlier in the day.
Wow.
Turns out they played 2 games in 23 hours.
Oh my God. Because of time zones or?
So they played the first game against Chicago Bulls in Chicago, and then they flew back to Washington, D.C. to play against the Celtics. They obviously lost both games.
Oh God, yeah.
How mental is that? I saw the schedule and I thought Washington played, like, when I woke up in the morning, Washington had finished playing. And then Washington were playing Celtics at night. Absolutely mental. Anyway, basketball. Right. Next game. Liverpool. Well, Man United at home to Liverpool.
It's just
After extra time.
An absolute classic. So, the 2 biggest English teams historically, they have never gone to penalties in a competitive game, I think is what I'm reading. No, so scored the winner, took his shirt off, got sent off. He had a crazy 30 seconds.
There was so much happening in this game. Like, I feel like it was so throughout the second half, it was kind of still 100 miles an hour, but no real clear-cut chances. Like a lot of I think Liverpool had this 5-on-2 break that they completely messed up, and there was a lot of that. But then all of a sudden, it springs back into life. When Anthony scores, really, Liverpool almost score again, almost immediately, and then Rashford goes down the other end. I think I've heard that there might have been a suggestion of offside on that.
Yeah, they never checked it, but they still suggest he was just slightly off,
which saves him a little bit, because I'm just like, that's it. It should have been over, and obviously then when Liverpool are ahead in extra time, you're thinking that they're going to be cursing that, but.
I just couldn't believe how many counters Liverpool were wasting. When you consider them as a team over the last few years, they can be just deadly on a counter.
Yeah.
There was a 5v2, maybe even a 4v2 as well. And just the final pass was horrible. I think they thought the game was won. And then United score out of nothing, and then they were right back in it. I mean, even extra time, they're playing Bruno at centre half. They had Anthony at left back. Liverpool couldn't get anywhere near them. And it's just a different version that keep popping up every now and then.
It was screaming fatigue to me for Liverpool. I just thought they looked so tired. That's their 18th game this calendar year or something like that.
This calendar year, goodness me.
When you consider the run they've gone on with the players they've missed, I think it's unbelievably impressive. So a game that goes 120 minutes, you're going to be the weaker on the. The benches as well. If you looked at the 2 benches, Liverpool's was so much weaker. Yeah. So the longer the game went on, the less favour they had.
Well, a sign of the weakness will be how many of the players I know on the bench. I know Adrian, Gakpo, Elliott, Simicast, Gravenberch, Clark, McConnell, Dans, and I know Bradley. But yeah, that's a pretty weak bench, because that's the depth. That's the depths of their squad.
Yeah, some of those names who you mentioned, they've played a big part of the last few weeks. Dans, McConnell, Clark. These are some of the young lads that have come through, and they're not bad players, but they're just not full-blooded first-team squadders like United were bringing on an £80 million Anthony, who hasn't been doing much, but just the difference is it's a different world.
I guess the wider context for the game is it's Man United Liverpool, the true Northwest derby.
Yeah, I think it showed the ugly side quite a lot as well. I think you've probably seen a lot of the tragedy chanting that was going on, some of the videos that have come out today. Football definitely shows its ugly side again, which is pretty unfortunate. I think the fines for this sort of stuff have got to be comparable with FFP. If you want anything to do it, like clubs are paying $100,000 fine for this, and it's nothing to a club like United.
Yeah, they're paying $100,000 fine for what? For the chanting,
tragedy chanting, or if there's.
So I assume they're chanting Hillsborough. And
there's also there was a lot going on in the
and then there's Munich, and then there's Munich on the other side.
Yeah. So there was always the victim chants going on, just some of this horrible chants, and then there's a video of a guy mocking Hillsborough, who's obviously been caught on video, so it's gone quite viral. But the penalties are nowhere near as bad as they should be. I know the club can't always take responsibility for the fans, but if the fans know what's going to happen, it would nowhere near happen as much. 5,000 people all singing.
It's that group mentality, isn't it? You think, oh, they're not going to pick me out or whatever. But yeah, so that you just
it happens everywhere, but it definitely needs stamping out.
It's hard because like one of the reasons that it's such a great game is because there's that needle between fans, but obviously that goes way too far. So yeah, it's I don't see how like you say, James, there has to be some sanctions, some like more extreme sanctions against the club that make the fans think twice. It's fine for there to be banter and whatever, but that's way above and beyond that, isn't it?
I think talking about sanctions, I think the FFP probably needs a second look at in the Premier League, given what's going on today.
Yeah, we'll talk about FFP in a minute. Let's finish off the FA Cup roundup. Man City, Newcastle.
Fairly straightforward.
That's exactly the way it was going to be. I think Newcastle's squad depth, isn't it?
And they just don't have that intensity that they had last year. I don't know what it is. Like, injuries have been a factor for them this season. But they just, Eddie Howe made quite an extreme tactical change. They went 5 at the back, 5-3-2. So I think they kind of set their stall out that they were going to be sitting deep and trying to catch City on
penalties.
Say again?
Play for penalties.
Well, yeah, try and catch City on the break with Gordon. Basically, I think that was the plan. Obviously, Isak's up there as well, and he's got lots of quality, but they don't have that bit between their teeth that they had last year when they were running all over teams. And it'll be interesting to see how they get back. How they get that back. Like, I think their season's pretty much done now. Now they're out of the FA Cup, they're out of Europe. They're not looking like they're going to get in the European spots in the league. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the summer with them. They probably need to sell a player in order to keep bringing players in, and whether Howe can get them going again and how long he gets to do that, basically.
Yeah, they're in this weird spot on. I think it's a couple of weeks ago that last year's success is definitely hurting them this year. They didn't have the squad depth to go and play in the Champions League and compete on 4 fronts. And then you add in the fact that they can't really reinforce at the level they can afford to do and they want to do. They're going to have to make a decision. And I mean, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'm seeing what's happening at Notts Forest and Everton and saying, all right, is a -4 point deduction worth it to go and spend 100 million over a summer? It's definitely a playoff. Like, will them bring in 100 million worth of players get them 4 more points than they would have done without it? Probably.
Chelsea beat Leicester comfortably.
Yeah, I think Chelsea were pretty good value in the first half. I don't know if you saw it. Raheem Sterling is having a really weird patch of form.
Yeah, I think he's like the story of the game.
Yeah.
Like that penalty miss and that free kick. And then
cleared the ground.
Yeah, like juxtaposing that with Palmer and his coolness and clinical nature. Like, yeah, it's such a contrast.
I think Raheem Sterling is a really weird player when you consider his career, because he's achieved so much and he's a great player. But if you ask a lot of people, they would say he's not a natural finisher, but he scores a lot of goals to say he's not a great finisher. And I think at times when his confidence is low, it probably even shows even more. Like, he snatched at some of these chances. He's not a free kick taker and he's taking free kicks. Like, he just wants that goal to get going again.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, during the time that Southgate was picking him for England, he would defend him to the hilt against all these people who would say that he didn't have the quality and that the reason he got so many goals was because he played for City. And now he's completely out of the England picture, like on an absolute packet at Chelsea, not even 30 yet. So interesting where he goes from here.
Yeah, I actually don't think Leicester were that bad as well. I think to get back to 2-2, I think 10 men probably killed them a bit, but they showed that they still have a lot of quality to say they're a championship team, but I'd be hopeful that they'd be ready for a better stint in the Prem than they had the year before.
The spine of their team is a Premier League.
Yeah.
team. Like the two centre halves and the three midfield, and then Daka up front, and then they got two really exciting wingers. They kept the ball really well. I think it's hard to believe that they got relegated last year really with the squad that they had, but they've obviously managed to keep a lot of that quality there. So
yeah, being chased very hard now by Leeds. So let's see if they both get up or if there's someone slipping up in the playoffs.
Ipswich have found their form again as well, so it's going to be a good run in the Championship.
I've got quite a soft spot for Ipswich. I think they've done a really good job on a small budget, so I'd love to see them up there.
All right, financial fair play. So today the news came out, and it took me a bit by surprise. I knew stuff was like going on, and there'd been an investigation for Notts Forest, but it seemed really out of the blue.
It's because it's so long. That's why it feels like a surprise.
It was their losses. Independent commission found Forest's losses from 2022 to 2023 breached the threshold of 61 million by 34.5 million. So they just,
way over. Everton cleared it by as well, and Everton received a 10-point penalty initially.
From what I've read, though, Everton got a harsher penalty for incorrect filings. Is that right? So
for fighting it, basically.
Fighting it, okay. Yeah.
I
think
so a guilty plea.
Yeah. So the story with Forest is that they were very open with the Premier League throughout the summer transfer window, saying that they knew that they were going to be in breach, and the story seems to revolve around the Brennan Johnson move to Spurs. Story is that they could have got 30 million for him in June, and they informed the Premier League of that bid and said that they were going to reject it because they didn't feel it was his market value, but that it would mean that they were being breached. But the 30 million, they're being breached anyway. So. So because of that, because of them keeping the Premier League abreast of like the situations and being quite open about the fact that they were breaking the rules and knowing that they were going to be breaching, they've said that they've taken a lesser punishment because of that.
Just don't know how I feel about FFP. I think you can see why clubs get annoyed because obviously it's based on incomes and sustainability, which you want to understand protects the clubs long term. But I can see the argument that it keeps the status quo because these smaller teams have to spend to stay up, but they don't have the income that the top six have. So how do you ever become a top 6 team if you can't spend like a top 6 team? I know, I mean, you'll know this more than I do, Joel, but Villa have spent quite large over the last few years, haven't they?
Absolutely, yeah. They'll be in trouble next set of filings, basically. They need to sell it. They need a big sale.
So would a Champions League place go a long way to mitigating some of that? Or
because it's funny. So it's a bit like Newcastle this year. So Newcastle haven't been able to spend this year because the Champions League money doesn't land until their next set of accounts, and that'll be the same for Villa. So Villa are really close to breaking the rules at the moment, and probably need to sell a player for a decent sum of money by the end of June. And obviously, if they do qualify for Champions League, that revenue doesn't come in until the next kind of accounting.
But it's still a committed income, though. It's like a penciled-in income.
I think there's tons of issues with the way that they calculate this. Like the fact that Forest sold Brennan Johnson for 45 million in September inside the transfer window that was active when they fell in breach of these rules. Like, you can see why they're upset about that. Like, they've eventually rectified it because it's not in the right accounting period. It doesn't count towards it. So I think there are tons of issues with the way that it's kind of enforced. I think the status quo thing is like an interesting one. There wouldn't be a City and there wouldn't be a Chelsea if these rules had been in place when, Arsenal and Man United were dominating the league. Those clubs wouldn't have been able to do what they've done. And Newcastle are finding it difficult now. Villa are as well. They've both got like billionaire owners and they can't invest what they want to.
What do you think's the fix?
Yeah, it's hard. Barney Ronay wrote in The Guardian a couple of weeks ago. So one of the things about this is that the way that clubs are getting around it is by selling their academy products, because it's 100% profits against the books.
Yeah.
Like if you bring a player in, then they sign a 5-year contract. If you bring them in for 50 million, they sign a 5-year contract. That's 10 million on your books for 5 years.
But the contracts at Chelsea,
yeah, exactly. So with an academy player, you don't have that like amortization or anything like that. So all of the money that you get from them goes straight into the books for that year. Perfect. Like basically FFP issues solved. But it's incentivizing teams to sell their local talents.
Yeah. And
what Barney Rono suggested was that actually by retaining that local talent, you kind of like acquire their market value on your books. So Conor Gallagher is like the story at Chelsea at the minute, that he's the one that they'd be looking to sell, but he's been their captain this season, been like a real driving force for them. And I'm not a Chelsea fan, but I could see why, as a Chelsea fan, you would really want to keep him there, like somebody who you can kind of connect with and
build your team around.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously but what Barney Rono was suggesting is that rather than you have to sell him to realise his value, by having his value on the books and him being a homegrown player, it counts in the plus column. I do like that idea, but like
how do you set a value to them?
How do you set the value? You need like an independent board to set the value on these players or whatever. It can get so messy.
Yeah, I think it's probably a bigger issue down lower end football, but like a football regulator is something that's been discussed quite a lot in the EFL. This FFP model in the Premier League is one thing, but I think what you've seen happen to countless clubs now in the EFL, like Reading going for it at the moment, Bury go, Macclesfield. Who else nearly gone recently? Wigan have had a lot of trouble. There needs to be some sort of regulator in place for football, just because in the Premier League, I wouldn't say it's too tight, but it's going against top 6 clubs. And then in the AFL, you're seeing owners who aren't really being checked run clubs into the ground.
So this is probably
lower league teams, because the whole idea is to get up to the Premier League.
Yeah.
And when they do that, they're forced to spend way above their means in order to compete. And then obviously they're immediately sanctioned because they've lost too much. It's like, do you want teams to just accept the kind of yo-yo nature of going up and down and taking parachute payments? Or do you want them to come up into the league and try and compete? But like the gap is too big for them to do that.
Yeah, definitely needs reworking.
But then if you say the financial fair play, when rugby went professional, obviously there's the salary cap that you have. So there is financial fair play. And there are ways for teams to get around it. And they've been found out and relegated, like Saracens were a couple of years ago. So that does happen. Does it create a level playing field? Yes, but then you lose out to like leagues and teams that aren't abiding by it. So like we said, like the players that are going over to France and Japan. So unless the whole world of football is doing it, then you're going to see that exodus. Then players aren't going to want to come to the Prem. Like it's kind of a problem that we had with the Prem not attracting big stars, maybe like 5 to 10 years ago, really struggled. Like that's why Haaland was such a big deal, because hadn't had a big player come into the Prem for quite a long time.
In their prime, yeah, like there'd been years of Ronaldo going to Madrid, Messi being at Barca, Bale going to Madrid. Basically, those teams could come and get players from Premier League clubs if they wanted to. But yeah, totally different there.
Yeah, as probably bad it is for Forest fans, it does make the relegation scrap a lot more interesting.
The pod's second favourite football team now, Luton.
We do love Luton.
Yeah. Do we want equally? I wanted Everton to not go down because of FFP.
You don't go down because I know what you're going to say. You don't want Luton to stay up because of it.
Don't want Luton to stay up because of it. Don't want Man City to stay up because of it. Everything that I'm reading about Man City is because they've got over 100 plus irregularities, and it's actually a whole like scandal of cover-ups with agents and sponsorships, where the sponsorship was actually 8 million, but they wrote it off on the books for 60 million, and so much like that. They're saying that they will be relegated.
City's cases aren't a question of whether they've complied with PSR. It's a question of whether they've inflated their sponsorship valuations.
Yeah.
And obviously that is hidden through a multitude of documents. There's a team of lawyers that are kind of filibustering the whole thing, I think. It's a complete mess.
Yeah,
it's an absolute shambles, isn't it?
I saw someone say earlier it's like a sprinter being caught of doping and still being allowed to run. It's the fact they're still, they're probably going to win another Premier League if things go their way, and they're in the Champions League. It's mental.
Well, do they not get stripped like Juve did?
They might do, but you've ruined 10 years of football. You've ruined 10 years of football if you strip like the clubs that get given those titles.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, like, the same thing happened with Saracens Rugby. Like, they won the league they paid their players like image rights and things like that, and they salaried their wives as staff in the club. Like, all sorts of things like this were going on. In essence, it's similar to what Man City are doing to get around it. They've found a way around it that it's loopholes, but it's still illegal. And it was always going to come out. But Saracens still got those. They still got those titles. They got relegated, and they got the deduction and the financial penalty. But they've still won the Premiership, like, for 3 of those years that they were cheating. And same for Man City, they're cheating. So it's like, we think it's all right for, like, Man City to be winning the league. Like, we're cool with Man City winning the league, or do we hate Man City? I feel like everyone's fine with Man City, but they're cheating the rest of the league.
I think every Premier League team, bar Man City, is pretty aware that they've cheated.
I just think there's an apathy towards it because the horse has massively bolted. Yeah. Like, they've already built this super club infrastructure. They've already built the best team in the world. So if you take those titles off them, it won't go down in the record books, but the fans won't forget it. Like, nobody will feel like they won it. They'll still feel like they did. And I just feel like it's not going to make any difference. It would be really interesting if they were, like, severely punished and, like, pushed down the leagues or whatever. But I can't really see that.
They might get a relegation once, but people say about starting them in the National League, it's just never going to happen.
Well, there's no point. There's no point doing that. I don't think that's the right thing.
There's too much admin involved in, like, who comes up, how many teams are in each league, or all those questions.
Yeah, could do with the National League before they get there.
Go on then. Talk to me about the National League. Where were you this weekend, James? What's going on?
Just a severe lack of media recognition for my team's achievements, and it's starting to irk me a little bit. The Hollywood show was here last year. We had a playoff final heartbreak. We're clear by 24 points, and no one's chatting about it.
You're surprisingly well televised, actually, I would say.
Well, the National League has a B.
Do you want to introduce your team?
For the people not aware of, the greatest team in the country, so it's Chesterfield, National League leaders by 24 points. 24 points, with 9 games remaining. So the league is all but wrapped up on goal difference at the moment. We do get a lot of television because National League has a BT Sport, TNT Sport contract, so you'll tend to see a game every other week. But we haven't had the Hollywood show that we got last year with Ryan Reynolds and Wrexham, which is upsetting.
Because they went up instead of you.
They did. We lost in the final of the playoffs to Notts County on penalties, and it still hurts.
You're not going to have Hollywood next year either when you go up and they've gone up again.
They're going again, yeah. But I mean, that's probably the FFP point is quite relevant. Sort of the National League doesn't really have much of a salary cap going on, but once you get
to say much of a salary,
there's some money there. But once you get to the EFL, you have to abide by certain boundaries. So for the Wrexham to go up again is quite impressive. You see, Salford got out of the National League quite easily when they had the Class of 92 come in, and then it's much more difficult to compete with those budgets if you've not got the income to then go and spend on players. It's quite difficult. But yeah, promotion essentially. Great day in Oldham. The promotion party starts now for us, and we'll be seeing you boys in the Premier League soon. National League. 6 years watching us play teams like Dorking and Fylde
But that's the interesting thing. Like, maybe I don't love football enough, or even like football enough, to be committed to a team like that plays at a lower standard. I like watching elite sport, like the best players in the world playing in the best stadiums as well, and not just in the best stadiums, preferably in boxes or hospitality. So it's a very different view of football that I probably have.
I mean, my view is probably skewed one way, but I've always thought that lower league passion is always slightly higher than Premier League. Like, there's diehard fans in every club, don't get me wrong, but
yeah.
Like everybody who watched the Chesterfield match, you're going there because you love football. You're not like, I want to go see world-class players playing. It's because you love your town and your community, which I've always really liked. I'm not from Chesterfield. I just got roped into it by family obligation. And 27 years later, I'm still there.
It's definitely different for people who go. I feel like if you get into that at an early age, like if it's part of family traditions or whatever, then you build you build that tribalism up, I think.
Definitely. And you wouldn't go to Oldham out of choice, so sorry people from Oldham. Right, should we get on to some golf quickly?
Yeah, we should do that.
Scotty Scheffler won the TPC in Sawgrass last year comfortably. With a neck injury this week, he was surely not going to do the same. James?
Yeah, first ever person to retain the Players' Championship, Scotty Scheffler.
That's crazy.
I mean, people have said this for a while, but if Scotty Scheffler just puts averagely for the field, he wins. The rest of what he does is that good, tee to green, that once he gets them, he has that many looks at birdie. Like, if he can just make a few of them, he's a really tough man to chase down. There's a lot of comparison made. Sorry, go on.
Doesn't make any mistakes.
He last year he was the lowest bogey maker of the field, which is not surprising. I think people compare his form to Tiger, which Tiger in his prime, I was slightly too young to really understand the gravity of what he was doing. But every week you watch golf at the moment, and Scheffler will be in and around that top spot, which is pretty impressive. We also had the first time ever. The winner and the runner-up were the same pairing. So I'm not sure if you've seen any of the highlights. Wyndham Clark.
Of course. Yeah.
On 18 to go to a £2 million playoff, an extra £2 million. And this putt was in the hole at one point and it came back around towards him.
Did you see it, Joel?
No.
He gave it full beans.
Oh,
if he missed the hole, it was going 20 yards past.
Oh, wow.
He took the break. I think you would call it taking the break out of the equation.
Yeah. Can you imagine that pressure, though? Can you imagine how he felt standing over that ball?
18.
And it basically bounced in and out. It went to the back of the cup. It went over the cup, but it dipped. Went over the cup, and then bounced off the back rim of the cup to the side.
My putter would be in the 18th lake somewhere if that happened to me.
I was watching Xander Schauffele and I thought that Odyssey putter would look really nice in my bag. It got cold. It got cold for him though. I felt bad for him because he had such a commanding lead going into the 18th.
He's a bit of a nearly man, Xander Schauffele. Incredibly talented, but to beat these guys, you have to be born.
You've got to have the mental edge.
Yeah, exactly. It's as big a mental game for those as it is the rest.
I feel like he's always up and around there, and there's been players down the years who have been like that, and now you barely see them up there because they can only do it for so long, and then they just fall away. Like the one that I'm thinking of is Jason Day. I feel like Jason Day was always up there, and then I barely see him now. I don't know if that's injuries or
he had a really bad few years of injuries. He's actually made the last couple of years. He's injury free, and he's been rebuilding his swing. You'll see him now, top 15, top 20.
Okay.
He had a win last year, I think it was. So he's definitely trending in the right direction. I really like Jason Day. He was world number one at one point. He got such a lovely swing to watch.
It's even like Luke Donald. Like Luke Donald's probably aged out a little bit now, but Luke Donald never winning. He didn't. Did he win a major? Did he win the Masters? I don't think. Did he never win a major? But he won the tour. But just so consistent.
Yeah, he's one of the only people to achieve, one of two golfers to achieve the world number one status without winning a major, which says how good he was in everything else.
Name the other one.
Lee Westwood. Yeah.
Very talented man. Luke Donald, though, I used to love the way Luke Donald probably plays really similar golf to Xander Schauffele.
I thought you were going to say to me then.
I thought that's exactly where you were going.
To me, well, there's no one on the tour that plays similar golf to me. That has so much enthusiasm for such a lack of ability.
What happened to Rory? Because he started like house on fire again.
Honestly, I've got no idea what's happened to McIlroy. He is the last of him. I actually feel sorry for him. I don't know if you guys watched the Full Swing documentary, but he has been the spokesperson for the tour for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
With the announcement of the merger, they just threw him under the bus. They really did.
But why is he carrying that?
Legacy. I think he probably cares quite a lot about legacy. I see he's quite good friends with Tiger as well. Like, he had one of the biggest PGA Tour legacies there was. Rory did, and a lot of his pals have just thrown it away for Liv. I think the merger talks going on this week could be interesting. And if I'm honest, as a golf fan, I'm just desperate to see everybody back in the same field. I don't care what it is.
It was actually, that was one of the great things about watching the players this weekend, is how competitive the field was. It still was. It was.
Yeah.
I know John Rahm, Brooks Koepka, Bryson weren't there.
Yeah. And you think of I think the outside of Scotty Scheffler, Joaquin Neiman is probably the second most important player in the world, and he is not. I've not seen him.
Is he going to be at the Masters now? He's qualified now. He's
got a Masters invite and a PGA Championship invite, so you'll see him at two majors at least.
So is everyone? Go on, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say, like Cameron Smith, he was getting right to the top of his game when he left for Liv. I don't know if he's dropped off a little bit or whatever.
He's competing on the Liv, he'll be in the top. I think it was top 5 in the Hong Kong event. I've watched a bit recently, actually, just to see what the coverage is like. And apart from playing music in the back, they have a dance music playing in the background, which is pretty weird. And I think there's a middle ground between what the PGA Tour do and what Liv do. PGA Tour is just full of adverts. It's quite an annoying product to watch. And Liv is, obviously, it's broadcast on YouTube, free to watch, but it's non-stop golf. It's just shot after shot after shot, and there needs to be a blend between the two, I'd say.
But so I said it this weekend. Golf's the only sport where every fan turns up ready to play around. Golf fans are a very specific brand of people. I don't know that they're ready to go to a rave on the golf course with the dance music banging in the background. It just feels like they've kind of missed the mark. I don't know that that's the spicing up that it needed.
I think they would say that they weren't aiming it at those people.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I think golf since COVID has taken on a whole new player base. There's talks about. Obviously the clubs 30 years ago weren't allowing women to join, so that was one progression, and now you're getting people that aren't really, the middle class, people that have historically played golf. Is changing so much, and I think that's the audience that Liv were going after, and they've probably got there. If you see all don't know if you've ever seen the Waste Management, the PGA Tour event. It's always historically been a bit party-like. They've got a party hole and people throw beers around or whatever. But this year, it was probably the worst it's ever been. They've stopped people coming in at points. They stopped serving beer. There's people sliding down the courses and stuff, which it probably went slightly too far.
People in the lakes.
Yeah. It's definitely taking on a new crowd, which is, I think the game needs to grow and needs to evolve a little bit, but people jumping into lakes on the 17th hole is probably not the best idea.
I think to do that, like you say, the game needs to grow and needs to evolve, but to do that, they need the best players
all in one place.
The same events. You can't have it split the way that it is.
Do they need... Because the length of it's similar to a cricket match. So they play 4 or 5 hours over 4 days. So maybe more than some recent England cricket matches. But is it the length of time they're playing for? Does it need to be shorter and snappier? Do they need to bring in bonus points for longest drive, closest to the pin, like bringing in these elements. Like, no, James is shaking his head, but you love golf.
Yeah, I'd say I'm a golf purist, but I also think that it needs to be watchable. And I think gimmicks like that is where you're going to get away from the game. Like,
Yeah.
I think for me, the big thing that I really hate is no cut events. I think it makes Friday really boring. If you have a cut and someone is chasing it, then at least you have something to watch. Like, I think that's really the big thing with Tiger.
More cuts.
Yeah, there has to be cuts. You get no cut events, which that's probably the big thing about Live is they're all getting paid every single time. But
yeah,
when Tiger's played recently and he's chasing a cut, that's quite an exciting thing to watch. Like, you want to see someone get through to the weekend.
Need some jeopardy when the event is that long. You need some jeopardy throughout it that you can follow. But like there's room for gimmicks, but like on other channels. Like, you look at YouTube now and what that's doing and what golf is doing with that. Like, it's as long as the PGA Tour have the players, or whatever tour it is, as long as all those players are playing under the same umbrella, then they've got opportunities to make those things that reach different audiences, whilst also playing the events that golf purists want to watch, and that is the elite level of the game and the ultimate test of those players as well. Like, I don't think. Like, I would watch a scramble. I'd watch more scramble events and stuff like that, definitely. But maybe that's not what the kind of tour events are. Maybe those things happen like elsewhere, like say YouTube series, Netflix series, whatever.
Yeah, I think in the same breath, I think there's too many golf tournaments at the moment. I can't. I mean, there's obviously the designated events, what they call them, are the ones that you want to watch. But I think they should be making a bigger deal of that and then say, right, there's almost like an F1 season, right? There's 18 races. Yeah. There's 18 events over a year across the world as well, because that's what the PGA Tour isn't great at. They need to get down south, like go to Australia, go to New Zealand. Obviously, we have a few in the major in the UK, which everyone comes across to. But if you're going to have a combined field, these golfers don't want to play 35 times a year. Yeah, agreed.
But it's the only sport, right, that's all year round. That is,
get a bit of an off season, don't you?
Do you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the golfers don't have to. They can go and play on other tours. But yeah,
December, January, they're back down playing Nedbank in South Africa.
Yeah, but they're not top players. Are top players?
That's the level of players who are having to make some money, isn't it?
You get
that's the time to pick up some tour points. I was going to say European Tour. Is it even called European Tour now?
Yeah, DP. They start with the race to Dubai. That's sort of the starter of the season. And then you get the first major, obviously the Masters. But the major season's finished by July, is it? End of July. The last major. But yeah, I just think they need to build more hype around events. Like, if there's a PGA Tour event on every week, I'm not going to go, I want to watch Sunday. Whereas yesterday, I see the players going on, you sit down and watch it. Those are the Six Nations.
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of forgot about talking about that. Feel like we'll probably be cramming it in now. I will just cram it in. Like, Ireland in the end won, and everyone thought they were going to win. England beating Ireland was a nice created a little bit more jeopardy for the final weekend, because it meant that other teams could win mathematically, but it probably wasn't going to happen. But it meant everyone had something to play for. I think that probably the biggest talking point was Italy and Wales playing to avoid last place, and Italy beating Wales, having beaten Scotland and drawn against France, made it an incredibly successful tournament for them. And I was concerned about post World Cup. I did think Northern Hemisphere rugby, other than Ireland and France, like England, Scotland, Wales, just not in a very good place. Italy, not really, and they definitely not for the World Cup. So I think the tournament really delivered. It's like the fallow weeks that they call it, the gap weeks that they have between fixtures to give players a rest. I'm not really a very big fan of that, because the flow goes out of it, and then you're then going back into the club rugby season now, next weekend. They've not played for 9-10 weeks. I don't know what's happening I do know roughly what's happening in the Premiership, but you kind of lose interest in the club rugby because it's been so long. Can you imagine an international break every single year for 10 weeks that's not a World Cup?
Yeah,
Every 2 weeks.
yeah.
Having had World Cup
during
already in this season too.
during the World Cup, I felt that break more. Like you felt that the rugby was going on forever. Like there was weeks off. I understand rugby is the most physical sport being played, and they need a bit more time off. But the whole weeks off just dragged it out a little bit. And as soon as you get a bit of momentum, I've watched 2 games. Oh, no game this week. I'll probably forget about it by the time it comes around again. My big question about the weekend, probably for you, Matt, is how do you feel about the use of television referees? And there's made 2 suspect calls this weekend, but they're not every call being called. I understand that they can get involved in some points and not others. It doesn't seem very consistent.
It's up to the ref to then make that call, and they'll say, "Do you want to check this? Do you want to have a look at this? This is what we've seen." And then other times you get like the grounding of the ball over the try line, and it's not clear if it has been touched down. The referee's given a decision. TV officials spend 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes deliberating and can't make a decision. So you just have to go with the on-field decision.
Yeah. If you haven't got the proof to go the other way, I get that. But the Ireland try looked a bit suspect. It didn't look very well grounded from the still that I saw.
No.
So, I mean, if that wasn't enough evidence, that's not enough evidence. But I think it was the England tackle that got looked at in the last minute for the penalty. Like, if they haven't looked at tackles all day like that, why are they doing it in the 79th minute?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that the TV coverage, so this didn't happen in this incident, but the TV coverage is run by the country that's sharing the game. So French TV do the pictures of the game. So they can keep on repeating highlight after highlight of England doing a high tackle, and it keeps showing up on the big screen. It keeps showing up on the TV. So there's commentators have to talk about it. And then the TMOs, they naturally pick it up. So that is a very common occurrence when you're playing international rugby in France, that happens, that French media keep on revisiting it. It shouldn't happen for the TMOs though, because they are isolated to the incident. But yeah, so the incident you're talking about, the tackle at the end of the game that resulted in the kick, the penalty kick that won the game, it was it was classed as a no arms tackle. I think his arm was out, but when it hit the ground, he couldn't wrap his arm around because his arm was on the ground. So it's kind of like a bit of a 50-50. And yeah, you're right, it hadn't been analysed. There is more scrutiny in those moments in the game, like those decisive moments, whether it be like the last minute of the game or when the clock's run down, or when they're close to the try line. It's like, things that would be a foul outside, it's the same thing in football. Things that would be a foul outside the penalty box, same as rugby. And if it's by the try line, then it's different scrutiny.
Oh, okay. Good explanation. Thank you.
It's pressure. It's pressure for the officiating team as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
We talked a bit last week about Matt, you saying that England performance against Ireland might have been a bit of a flash in the pan, but does that, even though the result went against them, scoring 31 points against France? I
mean, scoring the 31 points was something, but it was the way that they played. It looked like they were clicking, and the thing is now they're not going to play together for another 3 or 4 months. So you then don't play together, and you have to work it all out again. So by the time you've got to this stage of building the way that you want to play, but no, it looked like this is a new identity and way that they do want to play. It's just, can they pick up from where they left off when they join back up again in the summer tour? Like, that's going to be the interesting thing. How quickly can they gel again? Because like we said, Ireland they're from 4 teams. They're mainly from 1 team, but they're from 4 teams. England is from 10. So like, that's the challenge that they're going to have off the back of the Premiership season, the club rugby season. Are they going to be able to get back on track and continue building? I'd actually feel quite comfortable with a World Cup being later this year, that England's prospects off the back of the Six Nations would be very promising. So yeah, no, I'm coming out of the Six Nations feeling pretty happy with England rugby. Before the Ireland game, I wasn't. Halfway through the Ireland game, I still probably wasn't, and I thought it was just emotional. But actually, no, you could see the intent and the way that they were looking to play had progressed again since the Ireland game. Like they were doing it right. I say they were doing it right. You could see what they were trying to do. They're never going to get it right every single time, but with the intent there and the strategy in play, it looks promising for the future. The confidence with the coach, that's part of it, isn't it? Like that's probably, we'll talk about it in the building up to the summer more with Southgate, but like how much time do you give a coach? Like how long's the program? Like how long's the project? Do they need to get the team doing what they want to do? And players that you want to bring in?
How long's too long?
Yeah. Mourinho, probably 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah, he's got a very obvious shelf life, I think.
Yeah. Has he got a role?
No. He's got a Netflix documentary coming soon, though.
Looking forward to that. Cool. Yeah. All right. We'll wrap on Jose Mourinho's Netflix documentary. If you have persevered with us for an hour, thank you very much. If you would like to subscribe and rate us 5 stars to join with mine and James's 5-star ratings on Spotify, please do. You want to get in touch, any comments, email us at allsportspods@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time. See you, James.
See ya.
Bye, Joel.
Cheers. Bye-bye.